Hello, welcome to day 2 of the Refresh and Renew Summit with Soul Heart Collaboration. I am your hostess, Jamie Allen Bishop, here to introduce our next speaker. Clare Bennett is a psychological astrologer based in Glasgow, Scotland at Temple Divine, where she guides people through the cycles of change, growth, and renewal. I was going to say cycles of life, which is accurate, but cycles of life involving change, growth, and renewal. Rooted in her own journey of transformation, Clare weaves together coaching, Reiki, meditation, hypnotherapy, NLP, and therapeutic tarot to help others uncover deeper self-understanding and align with their true path. She believes the most challenging transitions hold the deepest potential for renewal. Today, Clare brings with her Pluto, the planet of transformation, inviting us to release what no longer serves and courageously step into new beginnings. Learn more about Clare at ClareBennett.scot, and please help me welcome the amazing Clare Bennett.
Hello everyone, welcome to our next presentation. My name is Clare Bennett and I am going to be sharing Pluto's gift, the ultimate renewal, with you. Before we get started, it's going to be really helpful for you to know your Pluto placement. Now, if you've been to one of my sessions before, you will know that this is about astrology. This is about your birth chart, your natal chart, and there is a link on the screen here, so you're going to have to type this in, astrostyle.com/cosmic-calculators/Pluto-sign. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to do that now, because I promise you this part of the summit is going to be so much more interesting if you actually have this information. astrostyle.com/cosmic-calculators/Pluto-sign. And it should bring up two things. It should bring up the sign of Pluto, so that will say something like Leo, Virgo, Libra, things like that. And we're also looking for the house. Now, in order to do this, we do need to have your place of birth, your time of birth, and your date of birth. Most people will know their date of birth and their place of birth, but they might not know their time of birth. But the time of birth becomes really interesting when we look at a particular part of the chart. So even if you don't know your time of birth, it means you won't be able to engage with one part of what I'm going to talk about, but everyone will be able to engage with part of it, because the Pluto sign changes in years. You know, it stays in the same sign for 12 to 30 years. This means that anybody born in that time period will have the same Pluto sign. So everyone can participate. You don't need to be knowledgeable about astrology already. If anything sounds like gobbledygook at the moment, by the next hour, things will be much clearer. And let's get started. I just wanted to give people time to bring up that link. However, I will share the link a couple of times through the presentation. So if you are able to find out your time of birth and that time, then that would be great. Pluto's gift, the ultimate renewal. Of course, I'm delighted to be here with you, and a very, very warm welcome. Thank you for choosing to come to this presentation. I'm excited to share these things with you. I am Clare Bennett. You may know that by now. I am a psychological astrologer and also the founder of Temple Divine in Scotland, in Glasgow. I am, of course, forever a lover and a student of this ancient practice. Astrology is a really valuable tool for life. Most people just don't understand its potential and what we can actually learn about ourselves and each other. And I'm going to share some of that with you today. The particular part of astrology that I'm really interested in is the psychological part. So it was the Centre for Psychological Astrology and the Mercury Internet School of Psychological Astrology that I studied with. Our time here today, our time's precious, so hopefully we will cover all of these in enough depth to give you something really actionable, give you knowledge that you can take away and use. First of all, we're going to talk about Pluto as a planet, then Pluto as a myth, and lastly, Pluto as an archetype, a force for transformation, rebirth, and power. We are also going to be talking about Pluto through the astrological signs, making it relevant to the collective and to the generations. We're also going to look at Pluto in the houses, which is more about your personal evolution. And together, this is really going to give you a flavour of collective and personal evolution across generations and life areas. We are going to talk about Pluto in our lives now. Where is Pluto right now? What are the current cycles that are calling for renewal for us as a society, as a world? We live in very interesting times, and each time in history poses particular challenges and particular opportunities, and Pluto talks about that. Embracing change. I'm sure if you're attending here, either as a speaker or as a participant, you are open to this concept of embracing change. And it's not as, just because we are open to it doesn't mean to say that it's always easy. But we are going to talk about letting go as a path to more authenticity, more empowerment, and a total rebirth. Let's begin by talking about Pluto as a planet, a world on the edge. Pluto was discovered in 1930 in February by Clyde Tombaugh, a self-taught astronomer. He was the one that discovered it. However, he wasn't the one who named it. That was an 11-year-old girl called Venetia Burney, who suggested the name to her grandfather, who then passed it on to an astronomer. 4 billion miles from the sun, sunlight takes 5.5 hours to arrive. This is a far away planet. And the reason we talk about this is because the nature of the planet Pluto relates to the nature of Pluto in terms of our astrology charts too, including the fact that it has 5 moons. Pluto has a very strong feminine energy here. Celebrated as the 9th and farthest planet in our solar system, a day on Pluto lasts 153 hours and takes 248 Earth years. And a year there takes 248 Earth years. So it takes 248 Earth years to go around the sun. It's tiny in comparison, about a fifth of the width of the Earth and smaller than our moon. And in 2006, Pluto was reclassified or sort of demoted into a dwarf planet. Now, I want you just to take a moment here, just to gaze at this dark, mysterious character on the side of the page here. Just notice how you feel. Does this image make you feel uncomfortable? Does this image draw you in? Does this image repel you? Or do you feel curious about it? Or maybe just indifferent? You maybe don't really connect to it. We're going to talk about Pluto and Hades in myth. The Roman god was called Pluto, but his Greek equivalent was Hades, and he was the ruler of the underworld. The Greek myths are, of course, incredibly dramatic and used as tales to exaggerate certain life patterns, certain archetypes. He was devoured at birth by Cronus, who was his father. His father was afraid that his children would replace him, as it was prophesied. Hades was rescued by his brother Zeus before receiving the underworld as his domain. So Zeus, of course, was known as the sky god, Poseidon of the sea, and the crust of the earth. And then, of course, underneath we had Hades. Hades was a powerful god who ruled over the invisible realms, the underworld, the dead, and the hidden riches. I just want to really focus on that word, hidden riches of the earth. A silent, shadowy figure, rarely seen on Mount Olympus. He wasn't interested in the show. He wanted depth. His domain was deep, sacred, and feared. Not evil, but powerful and transformative. He governs what is buried, both literal and symbolic. Think of death. Think of power, hidden power. Think about hidden treasure, hidden truths, the shadow, and the soul. Now, we can't talk about Hades without talking about Persephone, and this is where this idea of the 5 moons comes in, and this connection to the feminine. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, who was a goddess. She was gathering flowers in the field, innocent, radiant, and unaware of the transformation awaiting her. She'd moved from being a child into a young woman. But Hades, lord of the underworld, saw her and really desired her. He wanted her to be his queen. He emerged from the earth and abducted her into his realm, disappearing into darkness. When Demeter, the goddess of the earth and the harvest, discovered her daughter was gone, grief consumed her. In her mourning, she withdrew her blessings from the earth. Crops failed, trees bore no fruits, and humanity began to starve. And so this brings in the idea that winter was born from a mother's sorrow. And this idea that all mothers experience loss. There comes a time where mothers have to let their children go in order that they can be their own person in the world. And this is not necessarily just biological mothers or physical mothers, but mothers of creativity. If mothers have a creative project, at some point there comes a time to pass that on to someone else. I'm sure you can all relate to one or the other. Because mother isn't necessarily just about being a woman. It's about the feminine. It's about having nurtured something and then letting it go. So the gods were alarmed. Without Demeter's gifts, life on earth could not continue. Zeus sent Hermes to retrieve Persephone from the underworld. But there was a problem. While in Hades' realm, Persephone had eaten seeds of the pomegranate, food of the dead, binding her to the underworld. A compromise was made. Persephone would spend part of the year below with Hades and part of the year above with Demeter. So began this sacred cycle, descent and return, death and rebirth, loss and reunion. And I want you to think about those sacred cycles that you go through at different times in your life, from one to the next, because this is part of what we're going to discuss today. What happened next? Persephone became queen of the underworld. Even though she was taken against her will, and she was taken against her will, she didn't remain a victim at all, because she was open to the experience. She surrendered, and the experience really taught her something. In time, she was able to embrace her role as queen of the underworld, no longer living in her mother's shadow. She was powerful, wise, and sovereign on her own. She walked between worlds. You can see her on the side of the presentation here, between light and dark. We have the white pillar and the black pillar, life and death. She became a guide for souls and transformation. And you can see her walking down the stairs, and behind her there is the doorway that leads to the life back to her mother. Each spring she rises, each autumn she descends, and through her the world breathes in rhythm with the soul's own journey. And interesting that in America, see, I'm from Scotland, obviously, and you call it fall, we call it autumn. But if you think about spring is about rising, autumn is about falling. This is the power of Pluto. To descend is not to disappear. It is to return transformed. Now let's talk about Pluto as an archetype or as a life force. This is a wonderful quote by Liz Green, who founded or co-founded the Centre for Psychological Astrology. There is an intelligent life and substance itself, which seems to be associated with the life force in living things. It is nature itself that will survive. And in order to survive, it must go through permutations, changes, death processes that break down forms when they have reached their sell-by date and then generate new forms. We've all heard, maybe said the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And of course, that's an oversimplification. But there is something about this energy of life when we think about the trees and we think about all the leaves that fall down in autumn and how the tree changes over the year. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. There's a time for shedding and there's a time for renewing. Now, let's talk about astrology. If you have attended my presentation last year, I talked about Jupiter. This year, I'm talking about Pluto. So this may be a little bit familiar, this next part. In astrology, planets are categorized as personal, social, and generation. Each planet represents a different part of your psyche, either your personal psyche or the collective psyche of that time. As above, so below. When we look up at the zodiac, we can see energies mirrored. We can see an interplay of energies mirrored in our own lives. The personal planets, these are the fast-moving planets. The sun is about our identity, the moon about emotions. Mercury is about communication, Venus, love, Mars, and drive. You can see sort of balance and partnership. The sun and the moon is the masculine and the feminine. The Venus and Mars is about love and war. Again, feminine and masculine. The social planets, the last time I was here, I spoke about Jupiter, the expander. We spoke about infinite possibilities, anything being possible. And in contrast to that, we have Saturn, the taskmaster, who wants to check things off and get things done. And finally, the generational planets, which is what we're going to focus on today. Uranus, the awakener, Neptune, the dreamweaver, and Pluto, the renewer. This is what Pluto is known as, the renewer. So of course I had to speak about this today at this retreat. Pluto is generational. Said earlier on, Pluto changes astrological sign every 12 to 30 years approximately. This means that everyone born in that period shares the same Pluto placement. It moves from Aries through to Pisces over a 248-year orbit. And it lingers longer in some signs than others. Psychologically, because we spoke about the planets as creating a map of the psyche, psychologically, it represents like a part of us that is wired for deep transformation and renewal. Part of us has a need to confront hidden truths, we can often feel uncomfortable when something's hidden. Some of us cope better with this than others, I think. But, there is a part of us that has a desire to reveal things, to face fears, to embrace growth through endings and rebirth. And here we have Pluto's influence guiding the collective evolution, exposing what needs to be released right now in order to make way for new life. There's a connection to power, intensity, and cycles of destruction and regeneration, teaching us that renewal often comes through challenge. I'm sure we can all relate to that. So then we start to think, like, what is Pluto's purpose? It's the power in the shadows, because we know that Pluto is the teacher, and he is a teacher, and he's a harsh teacher, but he's a teacher of deep transformation. It reveals what's hidden, breaks down what has been outgrown, and makes space for something new. Strips away illusions. There's no BS here. There's no pretense. It's about confronting the truth and guiding us through deep inner transformation. To work with Pluto is to accept that endings are not final. They're a doorway. They're a doorway to renewal. But when we have the shadow, we also have the light. And these sort of lessons that we learn are taught to us through extremes, from death into rebirth. When we feel fear, it gives us an opportunity to practice courage. When we lean into the shadows, we learn wisdom. When we become aware of power, it teaches us about empowerment. Crisis can lead to healing, and the need to survive can bring an obsession. We are being asked to face about what feels uncomfortable and reveal the inner strength on the other side. The phoenix within. I'm sure we've all heard and experienced this ourselves. This is when everything is stripped away, what no longer serves. So we're stripped to the core, the bare bones, the essence of who we are can really rise. All the layers of social constructions, all the stuff that we've absorbed that's been piled onto us can be stripped away in order that we can rise. Because Pluto teaches us to let go of what no longer serves so that something truer, something stronger and more aligned can emerge. Just like the phoenix, we're invited to burn away what is old and heavy so that we can rise renewed, lighter, and reveal a more authentic and empowered self to the world. This is about surrendering and releasing control. Just as Persephone descends and rises again, Pluto in astrology shows where in life we are being asked to face descent and rise renewed. Just imagine a world where we face our fears instead of avoiding them. We release control instead of clinging to it. We honour the cycles of endings and beginnings, and we transform pain into power. The spirit of Pluto is alive within us when we embrace change instead of resisting it. Acknowledge our shadows without shame. When we can let go with courage and rise from difficulty with new insight. Refresh and renew. Not by escaping, not by running away, but by transforming from the inside out. So a wee reminder, if you do have your date of birth, your time of birth and your place of birth, we can together look at where Pluto resides in your charts. We can do this by looking at this link, astrostyle.com/cosmic-calculators/Pluto-sign. And we're looking for the sign and the house number. We're now going to look at the signs, and I'm going to show this link again. And the last part of the session, we will look at the house numbers. Let's look at this example chart. Now, this chart is actually from the 18th of February 1930 when Pluto was discovered. What you're looking at here is a birth chart, which is the personalised map of the sky at a person's birth or an event, and it shows planetary positions in the zodiac. This offers insights into personality or if it's an event, the energy of that time, strengths and challenges, and life path. Now, here you can see this big red circle. We have Pluto is in Cancer in the 12th house. What does that mean? This means that at the time that Pluto's presence was being revealed and someone was discovering it, it was sitting here in Cancer in the 12th house. Now, the 12th house is often the house of the unseen. And it makes sense that Pluto would be here emerging, because this is the last house, emerging into this this new space here. The Cancer is, of course, the sign of the mother, and the moon is the planet of the mother, and we can see Pluto is making a nice connection down to the moon. And again, this feels like Pluto is being birthed into the world. We do have a lot to cover. There's other things I would love to share with you about that, but we are time limited. We are time limited. The next thing I'm going to do is share Pluto through the signs with you. We're going to explore Pluto's gift as it unfolds through the signs of the zodiac. This is going to reveal its influence on the collective soul journey. So this isn't just about you, this is about your whole peer group, and bigger than that, your whole generation. These are generational themes that are going to shape culture, shape eras, and shared evolution. Each generation is gifted with the power to create renewal. Cancer, this was a wee while ago, 1914 to 1939. At this time, there was intensity around home, family, and nationhood. Cancer is a water sign, it's a feeling sign, and it's also the sign of the mother, sign of family. And we can see when Pluto comes into this particular place, well, this is the time that Pluto was discovered, of course. Then around that time, we had wars and upheavals, reshaping belonging and security. There was a generation that was tested in their sense of roots, protection. World Wars 1 and 2 began. There was an upheaval of home, nation, and family life. That's an understatement. Rations, food shortages. Cancer is about nourishing. The Great Depression. A rise of nationalism and shifting roles for women. Leo, a big fire sign there. Pluto was in Leo from 1939 to 1957. We saw here a transformation of power, leadership, and self-expression. So this was a generational crisis around ego, creativity, and recognition, teaching us about the balance of personal power versus collective needs. A rise of celebrity culture, Hollywood's golden era, and television. The first superhero comics too. Also in the sort of baby boomer generation, themes of personal identity and creativity. Virgo, Earth. So Pluto was in Virgo from 1957 to 1972. So there's probably a few of you in here with this placement. So generationally, it was this generation's responsibility, opportunity to break down systems of health, work, and service. Perhaps it could be viewed as a generational obsession with efficiency, healing, and analysis, a transformation through crisis of body and environment. It was during this time we had the civil rights movement, environmental awareness, Earth Day being 1970. A focus on health, medicine, nutrition, and work reforms. And I want to bring, whilst this presentation isn't about Uranus, I want to bring in this because it is really, really interesting. From 1962 to 1969, Uranus transited through Virgo and Pluto, and there was also a Pluto conjunction. This means that Pluto and Uranus were together, amplifying both of these energies. Uranus is a very unpredictable, unconventional planet. So we see this powerful surge of liberation, individualism, and societal change. There was also breakthroughs: the pocket calculator, ATM, basic programming, the internet prototype, first email, hypertext link, mouse click, and supercomputer. All these new advances. Libra, air. So anyone born in between 1971 to 1984, and I probably should say these are approximate years. It would depend. This isn't like from January 1971 to December 1984. As I said, best to check your own sign and so that you know what's accurate for you. But during this time, we saw a collective crisis in relationships, fairness, and justice. A transformation of how society understands partnership and equality. Each sign has got some traits. So when we see Pluto in that sign, we start to think, okay, there's change in that sign. So Libra is the sign of partnership. It's the sign of fairness. Therefore, there was a generational reshaping the meaning of balance, the meaning of harmony. Divorce rates soar, changing social norms about marriage and equality. Women's rights, gay rights, legal reforms around fairness and justice. Labouring John Lennon's peace anthems like Imagine and Give Peace a Chance. Libra is as a sign of peace. Became iconic in the area's anti-war movement. Scorpio. Now this is particularly powerful because each sign in astrology has got a ruling planet, and the ruling planet of Scorpio is Pluto. This means that some of the characteristics that we associate with Scorpio, we also associate with that ruling planet. 1983 to 1995. You'll see that this is a slightly shorter length of time, and I think it's because we probably couldn't handle if Pluto stayed in Scorpio for too long. What are the themes here? Death, rebirth, sex, and psychological depth. A generation drawn to taboos, survival, transformation, and emotional truth. So here we see there's a cultural fascination with the occult, horror, and gothic aesthetics. Harry Potter, Tim Burton, and industrial music. The mainstream, things like tattoos, piercings, maybe darker fashion expressions. We can see that coming into the mainstream. HIV and AIDS crisis brought sex and death into public conversation. These weren't things that were spoken about before, and Pluto forces things to come to the surface. There was a rise in trauma awareness and debates on sensitivity, protection, and free speech. Cold War fears, nuclear near misses, Chernobyl disaster intensified fear. Pop culture embraced the dark, from Gremlins to Marilyn Manson. And perhaps there was an obsession with power, secrecy, and survival through shadow work as well. Think about the governments that were in power at that time. You may see some of those themes there as well. Sagittarius fire. So this was 1995 to 2008. And here we see transformation of beliefs, truth, and freedom. These are all Sagittarius qualities: beliefs, truth, and freedom. Through a crisis, generational shifts in religion and philosophy and global identity. A digital revolution in knowledge, the rise of the internet, Wikipedia, ebooks. Power through information, Google and Facebook emerge. We had 9/11 in that time, and global conflict reshaping religious and philosophical worldviews. There was a rise of ideological extremism, fundamentalism, new atheism, culture wars, and it was a generation capable of great wisdom, wealth, and expansion, but also vulnerable to dogma and excess. I do realise that some of these topics are quite intense, and I know that I'm reading them off this PowerPoint just as bullet points. So I do hope that some of the topics that I'm mentioning here aren't causing anyone any distress or upset. Because I feel like I'm not able to maybe describe them as sensitively as perhaps I would like to. Capricorn, Earth. So this is fairly recent. So you will remember some of these themes coming up. So Pluto in Capricorn from 2008 to 2023. A breakdown of governments, corporations, and authority. A generation living through power struggles and systems and structures. Transformation of how we view success, responsibility, and control. There was the global financial crisis, breakdown of institutions and corporations. These are very Capricorn things. A focus on government, authority, and systemic power struggles like Occupy and climate strikes. We can see Pluto wants to transform, it wants to change things, but often that starts with destruction of the old paradigm. And let's get excited because this is where we are now. And a lot of astrologers have been really feeling quite optimistic about this. But of course, we know that whilst it brings opportunities, it doesn't come without its challenges too. But let's have a look. Let's have a look. Pluto in Aquarius 2023. So we got another almost 20 years of this, taking us up to 2043. A transformation in technology, community, and humanity itself. Generational upheavals around freedom, equality, and innovation. Renewal through radical reimagining of the future. Tech revolution, AI, space exploration. Collective focus on freedom, equality, and community movement. So there's a massive opportunity with some of the more outdated, maybe traditional models of Capricorn being transformed, destroyed, changed. Now we have a time where we maybe create something so that there can be a big focus on community movements. Aquarius is known for that to be a value, things like freedom, equality, community movements being really valuable. Now, I realise that this is talking about the collective. However, a wee tip: if you are an Aquarius sun sign, this is not your Pluto sign. If you're your sun sign in Aquarius, that would be like your star sign. Most people would call that. This is a really important time, once in a lifetime opportunity, folks. Because what it means is that where Pluto is just now is relating with, connecting with the Pluto, your sun sign from when you were born. This creates an amplification. This can give you a complete transformation of your sense of self and bringing a lot more authenticity and power, and influence. Same goes for the fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, and Taurus. This means that Pluto is either going to be squaring your sun or in opposition to your sun if it's Leo. And with the air signs, potentially a trine. So this is these are astrological terms, but essentially what it means is Pluto of today has an energetic connection with where your sun sign is at the time that you were born. That brings opportunities and time for radical change. And what are we moving into? Well, Pluto in Pisces, the future ahead. After this huge change in Pluto in Aquarius, we're going to move into Pisces. This will be a collective transformation of spirituality, compassion, and imagination. There might be crises of illusion, addiction, and escapism that ultimately lead to healing. We might experience renewal through connection, through empathy, and dissolving of boundaries. There likely will be a rise of spiritual consciousness and compassion movements. Possible crises around escapism, addiction, and dissolving boundaries between the virtual and the physical. I am aware that I've shared a lot of information here. Do feel free, if you want, leave my contact details at the end. If you have any questions or if anything is unclear, I'm very happy to talk to you about that. But let's summarise here. We can see that for each generation, there's a corresponding Pluto sign and therefore a theme. The baby boomers had Leo and Virgo in their Pluto signs. Therefore, These themes would be creativity, power, service, and systems. Gen X would be Virgo and Libra, very much about healing, order, relationships, and fairness. The millennials, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius, those themes would be relating, transformation, and truth. Before we start this journey through the 12 houses, it's important that we give this journey the respect that it deserves. And I'm going to do that by, first of all, talking about Joseph Campbell and the journey into shadow. Now, I'm sure many of you will be aware of Joseph Campbell and his work, or certainly some of the more famous words that have been spoken by him and shared far and wide across the globe over the years. Now, he was a renowned mythologist and storyteller, really best known for mapping out the hero's journey. This was a universal path of transformation that we can see in myths and films and really the psyche. And this journey into the shadow reminds us of something, doesn't it? This is the work of Pluto. So his work really mirrors Pluto's process, which is descent, a death, and a rebirth, a rebirth. So for him, transformation begins by facing what we fear most, facing what we fear most. I'm showing you his astrology chart. This is his natal chart, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening over in this section here, because we do have a lot of Aries energy here. We have his Mars energy, which we know is someone's drive, what they'll fight for, what they'll stand up for. We also have the Jupiter there, which is the planet of expansion. And we have the sun sign, which is his general energy, and also the Mercury sign, which is how he communicates. Now, 3 personal planets in Aries with Jupiter there, amplifying all of this energy. We know that, in particular, Mars in Aries is the hero, is the hero. And if you look over here, his Mars sign is drawing a line here, i.e. making a connection. It's called a sextile, but it's making a connection. His Mars and Pluto are talking to each other. This is going to give his Mars even more power. So we can see with, the Aries energy, Aries the hero, Aries the warrior, Aries the fearless, contacting Pluto, connecting there. So this brings us fearless fire to explore darkness and return with wisdom. So we can really see that in his chart. One of my favourite things to do is to look at, I was going to say well-known people's charts, but yes, well-known people's charts, but also anyone's charts, to really see this energy come alive. So transformation begins by facing what we fear most. This is going to be a theme. And I'm sure many of you will have heard this quote and used this quote and maybe have a strong connection with this quote. I certainly do. These words mean a lot. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Remember earlier on we were talking about Pluto, that we can have a fear of this energy, a fear of this transformation. And we spoke about Pluto as being like hidden treasure. This is what we're uncovering when we are aware of this. It's the gold within you. It's the treasure within you. This is Pluto's invitation. Enter the shadow and uncover your power. And I want you to bear this in mind when we move through this next section. We're going to look at these 12 houses, and I want you to think about these 12 houses as caves that you're being invited to explore. Because the house that Pluto resides in is not just an area of life for you, it's actually a portal to transformation. And I've found this personally and with the people that I've worked with, when we really explore that house that Pluto resides in, then we will experience transformation throughout our whole life. And something that we don't have time to look at today is transits, because while Pluto will be in your natal chart, Pluto also moves around your whole chart throughout your life. So for example, Pluto is actually sitting, this is really interesting, Pluto is sitting in my 10th house at the moment. The 10th house is the house of career, but also your public facing image. And I'm here talking publicly about Pluto, and Pluto is sitting in my house. So this is why Pluto has been a big force. This energy has been a big force for me, and this is partly why I'm wanting to really share this with you today. Let's move on to look at the houses. This is going to be really interesting. Now, what I will say before we begin this is there's two things here. In your natal chart, Pluto will reside somewhere. However, throughout your life, Pluto will go through each of the houses. So it's worthwhile checking out your transits. If you don't know how to do that, if you're interested in that, I can help you with that, and there are other things you can find online. Pluto in the first house, self-identity. This is a placement of transformation of self and identity. You often get a strong presence even if you don't realise it. And life pushes you to reinvent who you are. It's an intense placement. Deep lessons in personal power and authenticity. I would ask you, where in your life are you being called to shed an old identity and step into a more authentic version of yourself? Often where Pluto sits in whichever house, we have an innate fear of that. But when we face it, then it brings ultimate power. I haven't included the quote, but this would be a great one to include. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. That is really Pluto summed up. Pluto in the second house, values and resources. Transformation around money, possessions, and self-worth to security, and find true value beyond material things. What possessions, attachments, or beliefs about money and self-worth no longer serve you, and what deeper values are waiting to emerge. The third house, communication. There can be intensity in communication, learning, and siblings. Words of power. Your voice can transform others. Learning to face hidden truths in thinking and speaking. How might your voice or perspective transform? If you face the truths you usually avoid speaking about. The fourth house, home and roots. Transformation through family. Deep ancestral patterns or hidden family dynamics. There's a need to purge what's unhealthy in order to feel safe. Pluto's in our fourth house. It can indicate that maybe we were exposed to themes of power, and at home it doesn't always mean that it doesn't mean an unhappy childhood necessarily, but it can be quite a challenging placement for people to have. And the question that we ask here is, what patterns in your family or past are ready to be released so that you can feel more secure in yourself? And the fifth house, creativity, love, children. Power in crisis and dating, creativity and children. There can be an intensity and romance and self-expression here. A rebirth through creative or playful energy. Now remember, all of these, I'm giving examples here. It's not going to be everything for everyone. But the energy's there. It's up to you what you do with it and how you use it. There are some people that are quite disconnected from parts of themselves and maybe aren't as aware. And I feel like life is about discovering yourself, you know, and like forever, really. Where are you ready to express yourself more boldly, even if it means letting go of old fears about being seen? The sixth house is health, habits, and service, transformation through work, health, daily routines. Sometimes people can be a bit obsessed with health when they have this placement. Crises here push you to heal and purify body and mind. It may uncover hidden strengths and service to others. And we ask, which daily habits or routines are asking to be transformed to support your well-being? Seventh house of partnerships. Encounters with powerful or controlling people. learning the balance of power in relationships. Often when we have this in the seventh house, we can sometimes give our power away to others in relationships. So where do power struggles show up in your relationships, and how can you reclaim balance and authenticity? The eighth house. I think this picture's funny. I hope you do too. I hope you do too. This is a very deep placement because it is about death, intimacy, and shared resources. We are often drawn to mysteries, psychology, and taboo subjects, things that go underneath the surface here. Pluto does not do superficial. We have a rebirth through surrender, intimacy, or joint ventures. So again, we ask, what fears around vulnerability, trust, or letting go might you need to face in order to experience deeper connection? The ninth house, beliefs and expansion. Philosophy, higher learning, encounters with foreign cultures or spiritual crises, a rebirth through truth-seeking and wisdom. Which belief, philosophy, or worldview is crumbling for you, and what new truth is emerging in its place? As I said, all of these house placements would work really, really well for transits as well as a natal chart reading. And a transit means that Pluto is traveling through that house now. So I would check them out, because sometimes yeah, it might be more relevant or as relevant. 10th house, career and public role. There can be power and crisis in career, reputation and authority, transformation of your role in the world, a potential to wield influence, but lessons in how to use it wisely. How is Pluto pushing you to redefine your relationship with success, authority, or your life's work? And the 11th house, community. Transformation through friends, groups and community, collective power struggles or intense social causes, learning how to release toxic connections and embrace authentic alliances. Which groups or communities truly empower you, and which do you need to release to grow authentically? And the good old 12th house, the house of the unconscious, subconscious. This house is always a bit harder to grasp. Transformation of the inner world, the unconscious, spirituality, encounters with hidden fears or self-undoing. This can also be, the 12th house can also be what's been passed down to us. I don't necessarily mean physically, but also, emotionally. But this can be the sort of, things that have been inherited. Deep healing and rebirth through surrender, solitude, the mystical. And we might ask ourselves, what hidden fears or unconscious patterns are surfacing for you, and how might embracing them bring healing? Let's talk about Elizabeth Taylor. If you know who Elizabeth Taylor is, she had Pluto in her 7th house, the house of partnerships. We saw that really lived out in its intensity through how many marriages. I think she had 8 marriages. Her relationships began the arena for deep transformation, this constant dance of power, passion, renewal, death, rebirth, divorce, get married again, that sort of thing. We can see it here. Let's embrace, I know some of the topics here have been quite heavy, but let's see that this is a gift. This is a gift. This is about refreshing. This is the ultimate renewal. It doesn't get more intense and more renewed than Pluto. The invitation is to face your fears. Time to be courageous and dig deep. We are all courageous, and I feel like facing our fears is something as a lifelong journey. I know people like to, I think some of us in the personal development world pretend that we don't have as many fears as we actually do. And sometimes when we move and we face one fear, then another fear will come up in its place. So let's discover your Pluto placement in your birth chart, uncover the areas of your life that are really ripe for transformation and rebirth. Lean into the discomfort, for growth often begins where we feel challenged. And a reminder that Pluto always teaches renewal after crisis. Was one area in your life ready for release, so something new can be born? What's one area in your life ready for release so something new can be born? Let's take a big deep breath in and a big deep breath out. And let's rise in renewal. Pluto reminds us that endings are never the end. Like Persephone rising from the underworld or the phoenix from the ashes, each descent carries the seed of renewal. Whatever Pluto lives in your chart, it calls for you to release what no longer serves and step into greater courage, truth, and light. May we all leave here with the strength to refresh, renew, and rise. Thank you. Thank you so, so, so much. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been an honour to be here. Let's stay connected. I want to hear your reflections. If you want to ask questions, really do feel free to reach out. I'm Clare Bennett. I'm a psychological astrologer at Temple Divine. My email is connect@ClareBennett.scot. My website is ClareBennett.scot. You can find me on LinkedIn, and also if you want to connect with Temple Divine on Facebook and Instagram, then you can do so with @Temple Divine Glasgow. You've been amazing. Thank you so much.